Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Strategic Wealth Strategies Podcast with our host, Alan Porter. Alan, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, it's a great day in North Carolina. The sun's out. I almost played golf this afternoon, but I had this interview to do. So getting ready
Hey,
to play golf this weekend, though.
oh man, I know you will golf. That's what he just shows you. Being in a profession like Alan's or being an entrepreneur, you have the flexibility to do things that you want, especially anytime you want. And our guest today is fantastic, isn't it, Alan?
Absolutely. I've known him quite a while. I met him through Bob Larson. And Bob is one of the best financial planners in the United States. And Daryl has now become president of the company for Bob, and he's doing a fantastic job for him. But
All
today's
right.
interview with Daryl is something that people need to understand because they don't understand. It's just like everything I talk about, Neil. They're taught to think about Wall Street and nothing else, basically. But this is just another form of securing money for people in retirement.
All right, great. So let's just get started. Tell me, who is Settlement Masters and what does your firm do?
Great question. Settlement Masters is a nationally known life settlement broker. And as a result, we have a fiduciary responsibility to represent the policy owner when they make a decision to sell their policy. Now, we were formed in 2008. Alan referred to Bob Larson. Between Bob and I, we've got more than 5 decades of life insurance experience that we bring to every single client situation we're involved with. And the goal of our process is to eliminate liability for everybody that's involved in the transaction, which typically means the client, the advisor, as well as ourselves, our firm.
Well, Bob, let me ask you this. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Daryl, let me ask you this. Why is helping a client know about life settlements so important?
Again, a great question. It's estimated that somewhere in the vicinity of 8 million life insurance policies insuring older age clients. Now, for us, older age means somebody that's over the age of 65, but approximately 8 million policies are going to be lapsed or surrendered on an annual basis. And that trend is projected to continue for several more years. And when you lapse or surrender a contract, basically that means at lapse, you get nothing. If you surrender it, you're basically surrendering it back to the insurance company, giving it back to them for what we call their salvage value, which typically, again, means very little. Now, in the case of a life settlement client, on average, they get about 5 times more than what they would get through a surrender back to the insurance company. In our mind, that's information that we think a client would want to know, that you can help them solve that problem or get that kind of result for them.
So
All
true.
right, that's great information for sure. Can you tell me, why would a policy owner go to Settlement Masters versus companies that are advertised on TV?
The companies that advertise on TV represent the buyer of the policy. And as a buyer, their objective, first of all, is to do what? Pay the least amount possible. I would compare it to selling your house. You have a real estate broker whose job is to promote the sale of your house, to get you the highest and best offer. The party on the other side representing that buyer, they want to pay the least amount possible. The key is the buyers that advertise on TV have no responsibility whatsoever back to the policy owner. They only have a responsibility to the buyer. Whereas with Settlement Masters, as a broker that represents the policy owner, our job is to get multiple buyers to start bidding against one another in order to drive the price of that policy up to the highest amount possible and get the ultimate maximum money for the client.
Well, Daryl, you mentioned about protecting everybody in liability about this transaction. Why is that so important?
The process that we go through with every single client is we want them to understand that their life insurance is an asset, and it's a valuable asset. And so we want to show them ways that they can keep some or all of that policy, and then compare that option to the market value of the contract. Now, in that process, we feel it's the best way to educate them as to their options so that they ultimately can make the best decision possible for their family.
All right, that's so important because making that best decision. Who is eligible for a life settlement?
Again, if you Google, we all go to the internet, right? The first thing we do is we want to Google and get information about something. So if you go to the internet and you Google a life settlement, or you listen to the advertisements that are on TV, they'll tell you that anybody that's 65 or older that has a $100,000 or more life insurance policy may be eligible for a life settlement. We're going to look at it and say, let's take a look at an example. Let's take a look at a 65-year-old male. For that individual who's standard health, they're going to have a life expectancy of approximately 21 years. Now, the institutional market that buys policies, they like to buy policies where the insured has a life expectancy of about 12 years. And the life expectancy means an estimate of how long that individual is going to continue to live. Well, if a 65-year-old in normal health has a 21-year life expectancy, but the marketplace is saying we want to buy policies for people with, let's say, 12 years or less, well, then that tells us that that 65-year-old is going to have multiple major medical issues. Things like a cancer history, COPD, Huntington's disease, coronary artery history, something that's going to shorten that life expectancy. Now, if we change that dynamic a little bit and we say, well, let's look at a 75-year-old. Well, a 75-year-old male, standard health, has about a 15-year life expectancy. So again, while certainly closer to what the market is looking for, maybe that 75-year-old still needs to have some medical issue going on, but certainly not to the same magnitude that the 65-year-old would have to have. So it's our opinion that the real target market for a life settlement would be somebody who's 75 and older, because typically as we get older, we begin to have medical issues taking place. So we think 75 is a better benchmark age to look at.
Daryl, let me ask this important question. How do you get started with a new client?
So from an advisor perspective, we would ask the advisor to have an initial conversation with the client. And as part of that conversation, run an illustration on their existing life insurance policy. Because that illustration is going to help understand how much money is it going to take to keep that policy in force, as we call it, active, okay? The next thing that we want to be able to have is a little bit of medical information. We use what we call our non-med form. But when you have that illustration and you can then have a conversation with the client, there's typically an aha moment that happens. That aha moment is, holy cow, I didn't realize it was going to take that much money to keep the policy in force, which naturally leads to the question of, is that affordable? Is that something that within that client's financial plan, they could afford to allocate to this particular asset in order to keep it going? Maybe they look at it and say, we no longer need the life insurance policy. Many clients have acquired these policies as part of an overall estate plan, and they've done the planning necessary now to find that they no longer need the policy. So you have that opportunity to have that discussion with them and find out, do they really need the policy? And if they say, I don't think I need it, I don't think I can afford it, then the easy question is, would it make sense to do an audit of the policy and evaluate all of the options that you have in order to keep it or in order to maximize its value? With that, we then ask for that non-med. So we ask an advisor to do a little bit of field underwriting ask some medical questions, so not so that they become an expert in life expectancy estimates, but we use that information so we can create just an initial range that we believe. Again, we've got thousands of life expectancy reports to be able to look to and turn to. We can pretty easily gauge, if we understand the medical conditions, where that individual's life expectancy may fall, and we can create a preliminary value. So when we have an initial conversation with the client, we can give them a preliminary value of what the policy may be worth in the marketplace, and also show them what it's going to take to keep it through the use of those illustrations.
Wow, this is just really interesting information. Once a client decides to move ahead with the full evaluation process, how long does it generally take to complete?
At that step, it takes approximately 60 days to complete. Now, one of the things that we have always done with advisors and clients is we set up a timeline at the very outset of the case, so that we let the client and advisor know when we anticipate completing the transaction and the pieces that are part of the transaction when they expect to be completed. Each week, we give an email update to the client and the advisor in order to let them know where we're at with the timeline. Sometimes we need to extend that timeline. Maybe it takes longer to complete gathering medical records or the completion of a life expectancy report. But there's also situations where maybe we've budgeted 10 days to complete a particular aspect of the case, and we are able to complete it in 5 days. Then we're going to let everybody know we've been able to shorten that time frame up. But we're keeping them abreast of what's transpiring every single week during the course of the transaction.
Well, Dale, this is a very important question to me. Of course, I've already done some of this, but what do you recommend to advisors to find life settlement cases?
You know, the first place that we would always recommend an advisor go to is within their existing book of clients. You know, look at those people that are age 75 and older. Offer to do a policy review for them. Gather the information that we need. Many advisors turn to us as well. Alan, you're aware of this, where you receive referrals from CPAs. You receive referrals from attorneys, especially estate planning attorneys or elder care attorneys. Talk to them about the problem that exists with many of their older age clients. Again, let's go back to that 8 million policies a year are lapsing or being surrendered. I can assure you the advisors, in terms of the CPAs and attorneys, they don't know about that kind of statistic. And again, when you think of the attorney, especially the estate planning attorney, who has worked with a client and they've built an estate plan, and part of that plan included the existence of life insurance that's going to provide a liquidity component when the people pass away, most of the time the attorney doesn't know, once the plan's been done, what's the status of that liquidity. That's an integral part of that plan. So, you know, talk to them about the problem and that you work with a firm that can help the client, you know, fix the policy. And when we talk about fixing, we're including looking at the market value of that contract so that the client, again, can evaluate what options are best for them.
Well, Daryl, I've always said, people ask me what I do. I said, it's not what I do, it's why I do it. But, I tell people I create my business just like a doctor, after question. But I have a team of people that I collaborate with, top CPAs, top tax-specific attorneys, and other specialists in their fields, just like you. And together we'll collaborate to come up with a solution for people's financial problems that they're not aware of.
Totally. Wow. It's such great information. Where can we find information on you, Daryl? Where's the best place?
The best place would be our website, www.thesettlementmasters.com. So TheSettlementMasters.com. Thesettlementmasters.com.
All right. Some great stuff, Alan, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. People need to know about this, and they don't. Just like all the stuff we talk about, Neil, or Neil, there's just education.
They need to be educated for sure. All right, guys. Appreciate it. That was the Strategic Wealth Strategies podcast, guys. Take care.